It should come as absolutely no surprise that Formula One racing is one of, if not the most expensive sports ever. The 1954 Mercedes W196R alone cost a whopping $29,650,095. So how expensive is the sport? Stick around to the end of the video to see the final expense of it all. The financial commitment required for some sports, such as Formula One racing, is so significant that one needs outside sponsorships, patronage, or perhaps even loans to make it happen. Being in these could be a lot of fun, but there is a price to pay. As we mentioned earlier, a Formula One car can cost more than $1 million. Actually, saying $1 million for a Formula One racing car is very earnest. They actually can average up to $12 million. The monocoque made of carbon fiber is the essential component of an F1 car. The cockpit and driver's escape compartment are built together. The monocoque is worth $500,000, but the team will definitely not skimp on it because it's vital to the construction of the entire vehicle, and it's crucial to the driver's safety throughout the race. So you can bet that these things cost way into the millions. You gotta remember the other parts of the car too. The gearbox, transmission, hydraulic system, hell, even the steering wheels. Yeah, I'm not joking when I say that steering wheels alone can cost upwards of $100,000. Both Mercedes and Ferrari spent more than $400 million in 2019. This doesn't include the cost of developing the engine. Haas and Williams, on the other hand, spent less than $150 million on racing. It goes without saying that input and output are directly inversely correlated. Well, Ferrari is one exception to this rule. So yeah, in our opinion, Haas and Williams' speed is deserving of their input. The team's 2021 season spending cap will be $145 million. But driver salaries and engine development costs are not included in this. The cost of fuel, racing track rentals, crew, and practice seasons can add up to an amount that only select few can pay. How much exactly? Well, it turns out that keeping a car, well, like the one you could use for Formula One racing, can cost upwards of $10 million. And that's a cheap one. Add that to the actual price of the car itself, and together with the maintenance of the car, this entire process alone can cost $30 million. If those figures pique your interest, you'll be shocked to learn that even more money, the most actually, is spent on the car's research and development, which can cost up to $500 million. After considering that they actually want to win the competition, some brands are willing to double that amount just to get a greater edge. So in sport, the entire car ordeal can cost over billions. Hell, they need to add a budget cap, actually. Yeah, I'm not joking. The annual spending of each team is restricted to $145 million due to the budget cap that was put in place from the current season onward, with the next two seasons seeing a $5 million decrease. To be clear, this qualifies as a Formula One team being fiscally responsible. Prior to it, some teams would spend up to $500 million, with up to $200 million going to just the engines, which honestly, I'm pretty happy about the budget cap. Otherwise, the teams like those we mentioned before would just keep dominating the sport. And let's be real, nobody likes watching a sport that's dominated, especially if it's a pay-to-win kind of thing. The majority of spending is those spent on engines, following by R&D and production. The infamously wealthy drivers are exempt from the restriction. However, they normally only represent a 5% total of the spending. In fact, 7-time former world champion Lewis Hamilton reportedly earns $30 million annually, and that's after what they had to take a pay cut during the pandemic. According to Ringo Lee Yui Pui, head of the Hong Kong Automobile Association, who oversees motorsport in the city, the racing itself represents the first class of everything. He adds to this by stating, "The participants are mostly sponsored or developed by the leading enterprises of the car industry, with their best engineering teams to build the fastest vehicles. With all of these investments, not only has Formula One cultivated a luxurious image and attracted an elite crowd, but also participating in Formula One represents an elite identity." The promoters are not given a free pass. Although their hosting fee is kept a closely guarded secret, it is said to be in excess of $30 million, although the expenses associated with staging a race can be doubled, or even higher. The cost of the circuits is also pretty high. The Shanghai International Circuit, which was finished in 2004, cost more than $300 million. Furthermore, the Formula One package is expensive, with US corporation Liberty Media paying $4.4 billion for the sport in 2017. Formula One invented the idea of sports sponsorship back in the 1960s, and today, sponsorship contributes nearly half of the sport's revenue. A pretty exclusive group of companies sponsor the sport, including Rolex, Ray-Ban, VistaJet, TAG Heuer, Richard Mille Bombardier, Ritz-Carlton, Aston Martin, and Hilton. The sport itself has many of the qualities that luxury brands possess or strive for, such as the exclusivity, prestige, and expense. The tinge of danger definitely doesn't hurt either. It's a natural fit for many of them. Prices range from a few $100,000 every season to the reported $50 million or more that Philip Morris pays Ferrari under a 1973 agreement. If you thought that was all, then boy, oh boy, oh boy, are you in for a treat. The infamous after-event parties at several circuits also add to the sport's allure. For instance, The Killers, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Robbie Williams, Jennifer Lopez, and Calvin Harris have all performed at the Singapore Grand Prix alone, while Prince, Paul McCartney, Beyoncé, and Guns N' Roses have performed in Abu Dhabi. Of course, Monaco hosts the glitzier race of all, with prices to match. For the 3 days of the race in 2022, a duplex room at the Hotel Hermitage Monte Carlo will set you back for more than $74,000. Oh yeah, and speaking of which, one of the relatively few sports with international venues is Formula One. A Formula One season consists of 21 races held in 21 different nations. The logistics expense is definitely enormous when you consider the enormous amount of employees and equipment each Formula One team must transfer into the condensed period of just 1 to 2 weeks before each Grand Prix. According to the estimates, each team is going to move about 50 tons of gear each season. That costs $8 million. Costs of all 10 teams are added together. Logistics alone account for $80 million. Each Formula One team comprises between 250 and 950 employees, all of whom are among the best of their respective disciplines and include engineers, strategists, mechanics, race engineers, and drivers. The overall staff size might range from 2,500 to 9,500, given that there are 10 teams. Imagine how much money is invested in each other and hundreds of staff employees. About $100 million in total annually. The driver alone can earn up to $57 million annually, excluding revenues from incentives and sponsorships. Formula One is one of the comparatively few sports with international venues. There are 21 races in the Formula One season, and they are staged in 21 different countries. When you consider the massive amount of personnel and equipment in each Formula One team and that they must move to the compressed period of 1 to 2 weeks just before each Grand Prix, the logistics cost is, like I said before, just tremendous. Each team would reportedly transfer 50 tons of equipment, $8 million, as I said, just making sure you remembered. When all 10 teams' expenses are combined, that's $80 million. Again, in case the math was lost on you when I did it last. And that's not even mentioning how much the Grand Prix itself costs. On average, hosting a Grand Prix costs about $40 million. Over $270 million will be needed to build a single permanent track, whereas the Yas Marina circuit and complex would cost a staggering $1 billion. This excludes all additional costs, such as those associated with the FIA circuit inspections and the paperwork necessary to obtain the FIA Grade 1 license necessary to host the race in the first place. So, how much does that all cost? And at that point, do they even make a profit? Well, adding up everything we've just talked about, a single team puts in on average $11 billion just to give themselves a chance of winning. And you gotta remember that some teams are willing to add more than that to win. And it's not like they make a loss either. Winning these competitions can be great and often end up making it worth the investment. The sponsorship and fans get happy, and plus, the tickets themselves cost like $995. That's like just shy of the $1,000 tickets to the FIFA World Cup. Will Formula One racing ever get cheaper? Maybe. Most likely not. Heck, would the tickets even get cheaper? Well, I mean, I guess only time is going to tell, my friends, my close personal friends. Alright then, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Adios.